Architectural Outcast.
Cocktail experts and bartenders will quickly point out that James Bond is wrong. The right way to make a vodka martini is to stir it. You never shake it because that bruises the vermouth. Cocktail experts, bartenders, I'm sorry, it's you that are wrong on multiple levels. The first and the most obvious, it's James Bond's flippin' cocktail. He's the one that's going to drink it. The right way to make it doesn't matter if he prefers a different way of making it. That is the right way for him to drink it. The main point of saying those now famous 5 little words, vodka martini, shaken not stirred, isn't to just order a drink. Those 5 little words tell us, the audience, everything we need to know about James Bond as a character, who he is as a person. James Bond is a man who always wears the appropriate clothes to every social occasion. And when he's invited to a fancy 7-course meal, he knows what fork to use. He also knows the ideal temperature to serve champagne, as well as sake. He can recognize a woman's perfume by name with just one whiff. Y'all don't think he doesn't know the right way to make a vodka martini? I've had a vodka martini made both ways, and honestly, I can't tell the difference. They taste the same. But to a man of James Bond's refined and trained palate, there is a very clear difference. A difference that he has very strong opinions about. A vodka martini, shaken not stirred, tells us that Bond knows what he wants and what he doesn't want. Bond expects to get what he wants, and he will not accept anything less than what he wants. Bond knows how to get what he wants. James Bond was not the first spy to be depicted in books and movies. Traditionally, though, especially around World War II, spies were not portrayed in a positive light. More often than not, spies were portrayed as either a Peter Lorre type, oily, disreputable individuals who were lying, deceitful, underhanded, vicious killers, or as a femme fatale, a beautiful, sexy woman who uses her feminine wiles to get a man to talk a little too much. Once he spills the beans, and when he least expects it, she sticks the knife in, dumps the body, takes that information, and runs straight to her paymaster. Spycraft in real life, despite the very serious risk to your life if you get caught, is mundane and boring. You're trying to be as ordinary as possible while you do as ordinary as possible things until you get yourself into a position to accomplish your mission. Steal information, sabotage, assassination, whatever. James Bond takes reality and all the old spy tropes and turns them on their head. He is now a proper English gentleman, going around the world, having all sorts of exciting adventures, meeting and having liaisons with beautiful, sexy women, and single-handedly defeating all the baddies and saving the British Empire. James Bond was propaganda. During the height of the Cold War, the books and movies were meant to convince the public that the Soviet Union was so evil, so dangerous, that Western governments were going to have to do unspeakable things, things that went against the very principles of those governments, illegal things in an effort to stop the Soviet Union. The books and movies were saying, yeah, we're going to have to do these unspeakable things, but don't worry. We will only send out the best of the best to do these unspeakable things. And these people, they won't be allowed to just run around all willy-nilly. They will be supervised by people who are even better. And part of the Britishness of all of this, we were further reassured, don't worry, they will have filled out all the proper paperwork. We will even give them a license to kill. James Bond has its own built-in contradiction. On one hand, we're being told that there are threats out there so dangerous, so evil, that governments, with all their resources, the only way they have a chance of defeating this evil is if they are willing to violate their own principles and laws. On the other hand, we're being consistently shown that one lone individual, can defeat the baddie and save the world. And it doesn't matter how big that baddie might be, whether it's a supervillain with a massive organization or an entire country. This is where we get into the beauty of interpretation. There are three types of interpretation: the artist's interpretation, the individual's interpretation, and group interpretations. And just because the artist and his associates had an agenda, a specific message in mind when they unleashed James Bond upon the world, doesn't mean the audience would interpret James Bond in the same way. Regardless of its original intent, James Bond ended up taking on a life of its own. It turns out a lot of men are attracted to the idea of being able to go around the world and have exciting adventures. They like the idea of being able to drive exotic sports cars loaded down with machine guns and missiles that can also go underwater. They like the idea of having beautiful, sexy women throw themselves at them. And they really like the idea of being the hero, defeating the baddie, saving the world, and getting the girl. And what woman would want to wear beautiful, sexy, stylish clothes while they flew off to Monaco, Monte Carlo, the Greek Isles, and Hong Kong with a handsome, mysterious stranger in an impeccably tailored suit who knew which fork to use at the dinner table? They could recognize what perfume the woman was wearing by name with just one whiff. And the whole time they're defeating the baddie and saving the world, they can't stop flirting with that woman. Well, it turns out a lot of women like that fantasy. The James Bond fantasy? It all began with Dr. No. Yeah, the books had been around for quite some time, and James Bond had appeared on film before. But as far as the general public is concerned, the first time they were introduced to James Bond was Dr. No. In Bond's first major motion picture adventure, there's no scene looking down the barrel of a gun. We don't have a famous pop star singing the movie's theme song over the opening credits. And it's going to be a couple movies down the road before we get Bond uttering those famous words, "Vodka martini, shaken not stirred." However, the rest of the formula is already there. Bond and Miss Moneypenny are already flirting. M is in his posh office where he briefs Bond on his next assignment. We see Bond getting his iconic Walter PPK. Bond is sent off to an exotic location, this time around Jamaica, where he's driving a snazzy little sports car. Bond meets a beautiful, sexy woman who promptly tries to have him murdered. After surviving multiple murder attempts and other adventures, Bond is beginning to slowly unravel the mystery. Along the way, Bond meets the first and arguably one of the greatest Bond girls, Honey Rider, as portrayed by Ursula Andress. Bond and company are captured and taken to meet the big baddie, Dr. No. The big baddie is up to all sorts of naughty shenanigans, world domination type stuff. Thanks to Bond's resourcefulness, cleverness, and ruthlessness, he defeats Dr. No. But amongst all the celebration, we've learned Dr. No was just the tip of the iceberg. He was working for somebody else. To be continued. It's not until the next movie, From Russia with Love, that we get the gadgets. And it's in Goldfinger where Bond first gets his iconic Aston Martin. Over time, every new movie had to be bigger. More gadgets, more cars, more beautiful, sexy women, more explosions. Every new chapter in the James Bond saga was trying to outdo its predecessors by being more bombastic and exciting. Dr. No is a pared-back, low-key story that introduces us to James Bond and his world. If y'all are into James Bond, it's well worth your while to go back to the beginning, to where it all started, where you get to see Sean Connery's James Bond, in my opinion, the greatest James Bond, but where you get to see Sean Connery's James Bond use just his wits to defeat the baddie and get the girl. It is true that Sean Connery's my favorite James Bond. Having said that, though, I love all the different actors' interpretation of Bond. It's just a shame they haven't made a James Bond movie ever since Pierce Brosnan hung up his PPK. Then again, with all the problems of modern Hollywood, they'd probably just want to cast some entitled, self-important out of an actor. Just as well they left it alone. At any rate, I hope I've given you all something to think about, and until next time, y'all be safe. If y'all are still here, Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. While you're at it, why don't you like this video, subscribe to this channel, click that notification bell. You can hear me yammer on about something else. And feel free to share this video far and wide.
Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment.